Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this second hearing of the Education and Finance Division to order. Quorum is present. And do we have minutes?
Yes.
Do we have minutes? Wow! Top form by committee staff. Representative Sandell, would you like to move the minutes from yesterday's meeting?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to move the minutes from yesterday's meeting be adopted.
Very good. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. That was a tough one. Well done, folks. We got through our first vote of the session. Today we will be continuing our overview on the delivery of education to students in Minnesota. We've got three different perspectives, three different sets of experiences. The Association of Metropolitan School Districts will be talking about the experience here in the metro area. The Minnesota Rural Education Association, obviously the rural areas of the state outside the 7-county metro, and then the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools talking about the delivery of education through chartered public schools in the state. I want to draw members' attention to next Tuesday's hearing. There's a shift. We'll be doing a joint hearing with Chair Joachim's Education Policy Committee focused on student mental health and issues that I certainly hear much more frequently from education leaders as I interact with them across the state about the needs of students. Because it's a joint hearing, we'll be doing that outside our normal time slot, instead during Chair Joachim's time slot, which is 2:30 next Tuesday afternoon. And we couldn't get the Vikings Stadium, which is what we'd need, I think, for both committees. So instead we'll be in Capitol 120, the House hearing room at the state capitol across the street. Before I unleash Mr. Kronquist on the committee here, just a note for all in the room, this is not AMSD presenting its legislative agenda. They will have, as all the groups that wish to come before us starting next week, will have opportunities to introduce themselves and present their legislative agenda. This is their opportunity to talk about education and the delivery of education in the metropolitan area. So questions after he is presented are welcome, but let's keep it on the meat of what he's presented. We can ask questions about legislative agenda at another time. Representative Detmer?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I know we got other committee meetings going on at 2:30 next Tuesday too, so.
And Representative Detmer, we understand that. It's an impossible, as you understand. Thank you. Any other questions? With that, Mr. Kronquist, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the tape and proceed with your testimony. Thank you for coming today.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Scott Kronquist, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of the Association of Metropolitan School Districts. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share some thoughts this morning. AMSD has been in existence since 1974. It is comprised of 41 traditional school districts, 5 intermediate or cooperative districts, and 2 integration districts. Those districts collectively enroll over 1/2 of the state's public school students. When Ms. Burke contacted me and asked me to talk to the committee about some of the biggest challenges facing public education from the perspective of metropolitan school districts, I was happy to accept, because that's exactly what our superintendents and school board members have been exploring really in depth over the last several years. So in your packet, you should have a folder that looks like this, and then there are several handouts in it and that I will be referencing. The handout on top is a summary document titled Reimagine Minnesota. Some of you may have heard a little bit about it, and this handout should provide you more information. Reimagine Minnesota was initiated in 2016 by a really relatively small group of superintendents, but it has blossomed into a collaborative effort of superintendents, school board members, district staff, parents, students, community leaders, teachers, and our sister education organizations, including the Minnesota School Board Association and Minnesota Association of School Administrators. The focus of Reimagine Minnesota is to address what our members feel is the biggest challenge facing public education today. And that is, how do we ensure that all students, regardless of race, gender, economic background, or geographic location, have the opportunity to attend a school that provides them an equitable and excellent education and allows them to reach their full potential. Our members believe that addressing this challenge is not only a moral imperative, but an economic imperative. As you know, over the next 2 decades, millions of baby boomers throughout the nation will retire and leave the workforce, creating an unprecedented number of job openings. We've already started to see the workforce shortage in certain sectors, and we are really just at the tip of the iceberg. At the same time, we are experiencing a major demographic transition. While just 6% of our residents in Minnesota that are 65 and older are people of color, 31% of our residents aged 0 to 4 are children of color. At the same time, Minnesota has significant racial and income-based disparities in employment, healthcare, home ownership, and of course, educational outcomes. In other words, the segment of our population that is growing the fastest is the same one that faces the most significant opportunity gaps, which lead to our large and unacceptable achievement gaps. Clearly, this is not a sustainable path for Minnesota, and it jeopardizes our future prosperity and ability to compete in the global economy. Consequently, our superintendents kicked off an effort 3 years ago to identify the challenges and barriers in our current system and to design a collective education plan that will help us reach the goal of ensuring all of our students have access to an equitable and excellent education. To answer that question, we conducted 12 community conversations attended by more than 3,000 students, parents, business leaders, cultural leaders, community members, and educators that garnered more than 10,000 responses. All those comments and feedback were recorded. The superintendents then synthesized and evaluated that data, working with school board members, other district staff, and drafted a collective education plan that includes the 9 strategies that you see listed on this Reimagine Minnesota handout. You will notice that many of the strategies are actually not initiatives where we are going to be coming to you asking for your help as state policymakers. In fact, school board members and superintendents are going to address them by sharing and implementing best practices, enhancing and expanding professional development, and implementing changes to local policies. However, we are going to need your assistance in addressing some of the strategies that you'll see listed on the document. I'm going to focus on a couple of them this morning, given the time frame. I'm going to look more closely at recruiting and retaining teachers of color, and also then adopting statewide funding that ensures equity, access, and opportunity for all students. So starting with the recruitment of staff of color, I want to note 2 days ago, 150 education leaders gathered to discuss the barriers to increasing the number of teachers of color in Minnesota. They discussed and shared best practices related to human resource policies, mentoring, onboarding, and ongoing professional development, among other issues. There was an incredibly high level of energy in the room, and everyone left committed to continuing this important work. We are also working closely with the Coalition to Increase Teachers of Color and American Indian Teachers, and I'm sure many of you have heard about this effort already, and we will be bringing forward initiatives to expand successful programs such as the Grow Your Own initiatives, teacher residency programs, Introduction to Teaching is a concurrent enrollment option, and other initiatives. We're also, of course, going to need your help and leadership in addressing statewide funding. And so I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about this really significant challenge that is impacting our member school districts. You also have in your packet a handout titled Metro Area Education Facts, which gives you a good idea of the demographics of our member school districts. And I should note that Minnesota actually receives pretty high marks for having a lot of the components in our funding system that recognize that students do have differing needs and that school districts face different cost challenges. We have compensatory formula. We have additional resources for English learners. We have programs like sparsity and small schools revenue and other funding streams that recognize some of these cost differentials. Of course, the big challenge in this area, though, is that these programs, while they're in place, are not always adequately funded and have lost ground to inflation over the years. And I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. One very significant cost differential, however, that is not recognized in our current funding system is the differential in the cost of labor across the state. And on the back page of the education facts document, you'll see information about the cost of labor. You will note that, and I'm sure it's not a surprise to any of you, that it does vary widely across the state. In fact, whether you're looking at public sector, private sector, nonprofit sector, the hourly wage really runs 10 to 30% higher in our metro area. Likewise, you'll see on the chart that this is true also for teacher salaries, which vary from 10 to 27% between other regions of the state. When you consider that a school district's budget is comprised of 75 to 80% in personnel costs, you can quickly understand that this is a significant challenge facing our member school districts. So how do they address this cost differential? Well, the very simple answer is it's the operating referendum. You all know, I'm sure, that over 90% of school districts in the state have one in place, and it's important to note, too, that it is called an operating referendum. At one time, it was referred to as an excess levy referendum. This was many years ago when that was a funding stream that was used for extra programs that went above and beyond what students needed. And now that revenue is very clearly just necessary for day-to-day operations. And for our member districts, it's really necessary to cover that higher cost of labor. A large share of the referendum revenue that comes in really just goes to pay that higher cost. This leads to inequities. We have significantly differences in property tax bases, which ends up resulting in different levels of referendum revenue. And this creates a real inequity when you have school districts that face really similar or the same cost pressures in terms of labor costs, but yet they're not able to access the similar amount of revenue through the operating referendum. So consequently, enhancing equalization is critical, and we'll be talking more about that as the session goes on. Another huge factor that is impacting our school districts is the formula not keeping pace with inflation. And that is another handout in your packet, probably one you've seen before, that shows that where the formula would be had it kept pace with inflation since 2003. Not having the formula linked to inflation really is a major problem for your local school district. And the reason really is that they have a very difficult time doing any kind of long-term planning. And of course, now we're required under the World's Best Workforce to develop strategic and long-term plans and to review those annually. And they don't object to that. However, they do object to and have problems with the difficulty in engaging in that long-term plan and seeing it followed through when they really don't know from one year to the next what their level of funding will be. Another major challenge that our school districts face is the special education cross-subsidy and the increasing needs of mental health in our students. I'm sure many, if not all of you, have heard from your local school districts about the cross-subsidy, and it has been rising significantly over the years. We are seeing an increasing number of students eligible for special education services, and importantly, the number of students with very complex needs has risen sharply. One of my superintendents recently noted that we're really in a situation today where our traditional school districts are serving students that were once served in the intermediate districts, while our intermediate districts are now serving students who were previously served in residential programs. And no, it just really shows you how that's evolved, and it explains why we're seeing the cross-subsidy increase. Now, while many of you are maybe familiar with the special education cross-subsidy, you may not have heard as much about another cross-subsidy, and that is in the English Learner Program. And so you should have another handout in your packet that shows what that cross-subsidy is for our member school districts. And you will note that it's actually now approaching, or is over $95 million. So here again, just similar to the special education cross-subsidy, our school districts need to take general education revenue and redirect it towards the shortfall in English learner funding, just like they do in the area of special education. So those are some of the significant challenges, some of the strengths, and sometimes things are both a strength and a challenge, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we think we have the foundation of a solid funding system. We recognize a lot of the differentials. I mentioned the one that we don't, the labor cost differential, which really means that school districts rely on the operating referendum to cover that cost differential. But we have not kept up pace with inflation in not only the formula, but many of these other program areas. In addition, I think another recent strength that I've heard a lot of positives from our superintendents and school board members is the reforms to teacher licensing. And you heard yesterday from Pelsby, and the fact that we are going to have one streamlined entity that's now responsible for overseeing and administering teacher licensure, we think is a big positive. We also think the tiered licensure system is going to help us recruit more teachers of color. So we think that is a new, relatively new strength. We have really done a great job, thanks to many of you, in having post-secondary credit available for our high school students now. We have a wide array of programs, whether it's concurrent enrollment, PSEO, advanced placement, international baccalaureate programs. And so we hope we keep building on that. We think it's really provides a great opportunity for our students to prepare them for post-secondary and to potentially save some money when they enroll. And then the final point I will note, and this is another one that I think is a strength and a challenge, is school choice. We in Minnesota has a plethora of school choice options. We have open enrollment. In fact, many of you probably know we were the first state in the country with open enrollment. Likewise with charter schools, we have many charter schools, magnet schools. I mentioned AP, IP offerings. We have tax credits and deductions for actually students that choose the private school option. So we think that the legislature has done an outstanding job providing options for students and parents. And the reason I say that this could also be a weakness is we think there's maybe been some unintended consequences as well in terms of some of the pressure it applies to school districts and the difficulty they have in planning their enrollment from year to year. So much of their budget is tied to the number of students that show up in the fall, and it's very difficult to get you can't just count live births like we maybe did at one time and kind of, then go, okay, 5 years out, we're going to have this many kids show up in kindergarten. It doesn't work that way anymore. So that has provided a challenge, but I think many people would agree, though, that it's also a strength of our system. So I think I'm probably about out of time, Mr. Chairman and members, but thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Kronquist. Representative Detmer, you had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Quinquist. Looking at these 40-plus districts, how many of them are experiencing decline in enrollment?
Mr. Kronquist?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Detmer, I'm sorry, I won't be able to tell you right off the top of my head, but only a handful are growing, actually, that are at least growing significantly. So most are either in the category of kind of stable or declining.
Mr. Chair, just a follow. Mr. Quinquist, would you be able to maybe provide that information to the committee so we could take a look at that? And
Mr. Chairman and Representative Detmer, yes, I'd be happy to track that down for you.
Mr. Kronquist, stick around. If you would, we'll have more opportunities for questions at the end of the hearing. Dr. Nolan, good morning and welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let the people take out the colored handout and then the PowerPoint, search through your stuff there for a second.
Sure. Dr. Nolan, if you'd please introduce
Yep.
yourself for the tape.
I'm Fred Nolan, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Rural Education Association, now in my 8th year, after completing 36 years as a public school teacher, principal, superintendent in a variety of communities in central Minnesota. And I want to thank the chair for this opportunity to talk about strengths and challenges of greater Minnesota education. I'd like to begin with a little bit about MREA. Minnesota Rural Education Association is a collaboration of teachers, school board members, administrators, and community members, and higher ed. They're all on our board. And together we try to think about what puts our learners first. And we do it for our collective future. It's not just about the learning today. We take the longer view of what is the value of education and graduates and higher ed across the state with a longer view. We serve 231 school districts from all corners of the state and across the broad section. We have 30 cooperatives. Cooperatives are voluntary associations of school districts that do specialized work in special education and other fields. And 245,000 students are educated today and every day. And Mr. Kronquist is correct. More than half the students are in the metro area, but well over 30% or 40% are in greater Minnesota. So what are some strengths of greater Minnesota schools? Well, first of all, we are the center of our communities. It's where people come together around common things, around potlucks, et cetera. It's multi-generational. There's actually a Harvard study from 2015 that shows that in rural communities, there's a greater chance of upward mobility, that children born into the lowest 25th percentile will go above the median, a greater probability in rural communities than in suburban or metropolitan. There's social capital that young people get. That's part of the reason for the social mobility. That social capital is when folks come around from multi-generational things. If you've seen the robotics competitions and how exciting they are, there's actually a feature film, a small documentary made on the one in Greenbush that's going to film festivals. This is pretty amazing stuff, and it's that social capital that young people get from working on projects like this with folks in their community that give them the courage to move forward, that they think that's part of the upward mobility part. There's community pride in their schools. That's why state tournaments are such a big deal, okay, in greater Minnesota. Small towns just shut down and show up at the Dome or show up at the Target Center because it's all about community pride. And finally, they are an economic engine of many of our smaller communities. They're the highest paid jobs, they're the most steady income, and so that's an important factor. If you want to know more, I can highly recommend this book, Why Rural Schools Matter. It's actually an ethnographic PhD study of 2 Arkansas small schools that got turned into a book. I'd recommend the first 3 or 4 chapters to really get a sense of what it means to be in a small community with a small school. If that's not part of your background, I'd recommend that book, available on Amazon and other places. The second strength is our people. It's a people business. But the key source of our strength is our teachers. It's those folks who come to our community, they teach multiple subjects, they coach multiple sports, they settle, they become leaders in the community, they become memorable. You can go to communities and say, do you remember Mrs. Brisley? Oh yeah, generations will remember that 3rd grade teacher. Do you remember Mr. Johnson? Oh yeah, generations will remember that teacher because they are so memorable, they're role models. Everyone else matters too, okay? But good teachers are the core not just of the school system, but of the community in smaller communities. MREA has begun to annually recognize our excellent educators. We have 4 educators of excellence, 1 from each zone. This is a big deal. The ceremony is very moving. And these 4 educators come from literally all parts of the state. We have Indus on the Canadian border, Fairmont on the Iowa border, and then Eden Valley and Park Rapids. Finally, I can go on to many strengths, but one of them is that rural schools are flexible and adaptable. Small school size makes things simpler. Relationships create pathways to change. For instance, the superintendent and mayor go to the same church. They can talk over issues. A 2nd grade teacher and a AD have the same daycare provider. So all of a sudden, the elementary kids are counting the concession change money after school, after the next day, to learn how to count money. Those things happen in small schools, and everyone is invested in the school and the success of students. An example is the phenomenal growth of dual credit enrollment. Southwest State University provides the most dual credit classes across the state. Unfortunately, that's now being threatened by HLC and their decisions about teacher credentialing, and we'll be talking more with you about that. But it just shows just how quickly small schools can change because of their size and relational nature of their power. Challenges. Yeah, we've got challenges, and Mr. Kroonquist went through some that are similar and some that are different. First one is funding student needs. You've seen the chart. It was in your folder for AMSD. Yeah, the formula is $600 behind where it was in 2003 when you take it on inflation. In 2003, the state made a bold promise to take care of the basic formula. Sadly, that hasn't happened, and that's a major challenge for greater Minnesota schools. Mr. Kroonquist talked about the metropolitan schools going to the operating referendum, and that is true. They have. And in fact, the average referendum in the metro is at $1,638. Now, that's on a per pupil basis. In other words, this is the total referendum revenue raised plus local operating referendum and board authorized referendum. It gets a little wonky and complicated for new members, but all of that together, divided by the total number of metropolitan students, that's the number you get. I should pause and say I really appreciate Tom Melcher at the department and his staff for sharing the spreadsheets and data that let me do this analysis. They're excellent support to this committee and great assets to the state. The outside the metropolitan area, the average student is $955. Okay, so that's a $638 difference. Now, it's harder for greater Minnesota schools to go to the voters. First, if you look on the left-hand side, the household income is less in greater Minnesota than in Metro. I'm updating that data. That data is a few years old, but we're in the process of updating it. The average referendum value, the property tax value that these taxes are spread on, you can see the gap there between the metropolitan school districts in greater Minnesota. I mean, these are significant percentages at the bottom. You got 43% difference in household income, 51% difference in property value behind the referendum. You end up with a 72% difference. We can't make it up on operating referendum. That's the key challenge for greater Minnesota. Okay, hang on a sec. Oops, battery clicked out. There we go. So this chart just shows you how this has changed over the last 4 years in terms of property wealth. The referendum market value is homes and businesses. Seasonal rec and ag are excluded from it, okay? Look at the growth between 2014 and 2018. Most of that growth has been in the Twin Cities. The median difference between property value per pupil in the Twin Cities and greater Minnesota has risen to a very significant gap, okay? Anyone trying to buy a house in the Twin Cities knows what I'm talking about, okay? So this is a challenge, again, for greater Minnesota. It's a challenge for you as policymakers, because not only have the medians changed, but take a look at this map. In the Twin Cities, you can see that most districts are either in the highest quartile for property value per pupil for the referendum or above the median. But you can see in greater Minnesota, we go from the lowest to the highest, which makes great challenges in creating state policy that treat taxpayers and pupils equally so that we have funding. So you can see there's many challenges in the funding area, but there's one more to talk about, and that's school facilities. School facilities are, very necessary. We run campaigns for bonds for them. We have long-term facility maintenance, which we really appreciate. And the state share has increased because of the ag to school credit, which is available for farmers and is really helpful in the tough economics of farms right now for 287 districts. There's also debt service equalization, which has been a program around for many years that assists taxpayers in 36 districts. But you can see that 94% of the burden for facilities is local. And that makes challenges in greater Minnesota to pass these referendums for bonds very difficult. We celebrate a 50% passage rate. Twin Cities is 85% or above usually. And here's the factoid to circle. Homeowners are paying $510 million a year for school bonds, for the payments. That's $500 million. So that's 94%. This is a challenge for Greater Minnesota. I think it's a challenge for the state. What's the fair state share of these necessary facilities for schools? And I see you looking at me, Chairman Marquardt, and we'll be talking with you about that. Okay, the second challenge is the teacher shortage, the teacher crisis and shortage that's facing us. Remember, teachers are the core of our communities. They're not just our education agent. They're really central to the vibrancy of rural communities. 1,400 teachers are retiring every year. The baby boomers are leaving the profession, correct. And the thing is, though, we're graduating fewer teacher candidates. We're graduating 500 fewer teacher candidates than we did 5 years ago. This is data from OHE that tracks graduates and what they graduate in, and you can see the decline. So this challenge is we're challenged with increased openings, and we have fewer graduates. So, let's see here. This is a little tiny to see. But on the left side, you see, we surveyed our members and said, okay, what's the most difficult fields to hire? On the left, you see industrial arts and facts are the most difficult. And one of the reasons is we're not turning those graduates out of Minnesota State universities. We've got to go to South Dakota and Wisconsin to find those teachers. You also notice all of the special education and specialized services on the left. On the right, the least difficult. And the least difficult is still K-12 elementary. But that doesn't mean there's a wealth of elementary candidates available. You'll get maybe 6 or 7 applicants for 3 or 4 positions. You're basically hiring every other person. So we asked our members, well, where are these new hires coming from? Well, the biggest, 37%, are poached from other districts. Now, this is a very small sample size of 35 Greater Minnesota schools. I think I had quite a few regional center schools like Worthington, Wilmer, Alexandria. So they would be poaching from their neighboring districts, okay? Only 31% were fully credentialed Tier 3 and Tier 4 teachers coming from teacher education institutions. 11% were coming from other states, and a surprising 21% were Tier 1 or Tier 2 teachers. In other words, they have a bachelor's degree, but they have no formal training in education. Now, as an educator with 36 years and talking to other educators, you can take 1, maybe 2 untrained teachers in your school. You're looking at me, Mr. Detmer, I think, Representative Detmer, I think you can figure that out. You can coach them up. But what when you get to 20%? What if you get to 30 or even 50%? What's that school going to look like? We really have to really think how we move so we get more. That purple 21% goes down some, and the 31% goes up. That's a challenge for the state. It's a challenge for Greater Minnesota schools. The third challenge is serving our students with special needs and talents. Smaller numbers of deaf and hard of hearing students, smaller numbers of students with autism means less concentration. And less concentration means, how does these things work? Staff shortages. Remember that list of what's really so hard to hire? Trust me, speech and language teachers, you die for those folks. You never let them retire. You can ask our Director of Legislative Affairs, Sam Walseth. His mother cannot retire, okay? The school won't let her. So she's teaching several days a week. Yes, indoors, correct. And so they make huge issues. We looked at the mental health grants across the state. I'm happy that you're holding this joint hearing next week. There are definitely a lot more mental health coverage, but there's also holes. I wonder if those holes are because there simply aren't the professionals out there even to file grants because they can't take on more clients. Physical distances. I was at a fall meeting of our members in Benson, which is northwest of Wilmer, and the principals were discussing a very needy student and whether to put that student on a van all the way to Cosmos which is a 70 to 90-minute drive through Wilmer every day. And they were agonizing over this. They knew that wasn't the right thing for that child, but this child was hurting other students and staff, and they didn't have the appropriate facility for them. Eventually, they ended up doing that. So the lack of appropriate facilities with reasonable distances is a huge challenge in greater Minnesota. The lack of financial tools to actually build these facilities, because cooperatives are kind of left off the radar in many places in statutes, and we'll come back to that. And finally, there's a large variation in the cross-subsidy. Mr. Kronquist referenced the cross-subsidy. What I want to leave you with is not only is it large and growing, but there's a huge variation from as low as $250 per pupil to $1,600 per pupil, and that comes off the formula. So the effective formula could range from $6,000 to $4,500 based on your special education costs. That's not fair to everybody, to all the other kids. Finally, could go on forever, but the career and college readiness flexibility. Our employers and our students go to all kinds of things. They go to four-year colleges, two-year colleges, the military. They go right into employment with training provided by the employer. And by state law, we have personalized learning plans, okay? But we have a mismatch between all that variation and our one-size-fits-all state standards, which we have had since 2003. We haven't had a conversation about this. We talk about having student-centered learning. We talk about culturally responsive education. But 67% of the courses are filled with required and filled with required standards. And it's undoubtedly the elementary curriculum has narrowed over the last 15 to 20 years. And the result, frankly, we have too many unengaged students. And we need to address that. We talk about graduation issues, but we need to address that. The fundamental assumptions have been addressed for 15 years. The standards revision cycle is beginning again. It was in hiatus for maybe 8 to 10 years. Now the art standards are up for rule. The science committee is working on standards. And engaging students is more difficult than ever. These little devices that you've all got, they are very challenging for teachers because no teacher, even as good as Representative Erickson, can compete in some ways with what's in their hand, or right next to her. Yes, although kindergartners may not be quite so susceptible. This is a perfect opportunity for the new legislature and governor to have a broad conversation. How do we address this mismatch? And we have administrators, teachers, and community members ready to engage in this conversation. This is a hot topic for us. So in summary, here are our strengths and challenges. Thank you very much for your time. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and we'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Nolan. Representative Murphy, you had a question for Dr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Dr. Nolan. I have emails talking about the rural schools that want to change the science standards. Could you tell me about that and give me background?
Dr. Nolan.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Give me a time limit here. I could talk for the rest of the meeting about this.
Why don't you discuss that with Mr. Piccolo? He's next.
Okay. We're not talking about the content of the standards, okay? The committee is working on standards, working on the content. What we're addressing is what I just talked about. How do you create some flexibility in the concept of what standards even are, okay? So in state statute, it says kids are supposed to have life science, physical or chemistry, and an elective. What they're doing, and it also says they must fulfill all the benchmarks. That's in statute. So if they fill up enough benchmarks in a subject area, they really create a required course. What I'm saying is that we can have standards leveled criteria for curriculum, but let's have kids choose from the bucket of curriculum they take. And science is a perfect example. There's four core disciplinary areas: life, physical science, earth and space, and engineering and applications, okay? Why don't we create standards in those four and have kids choose the three that they're going to take? all kids will be learning at standard level. They won't necessarily have the same content, but this will give students the flexibility to pursue the interests they want, and hopefully we'll have more interested students. And unfortunately, the Minnesota Science Teachers Association has taken it on that we're attacking science standards, we're dumbing down science. No, we're not doing that. We're trying to have a conversation about how do you reconceptualize what standards are, especially at the secondary level.
Representative Murphy?
Mr. Chair, Dr. Nolan, are you doing it just in science?
Dr. Nolan?
Mr. Chair, Representative Mercy, no. We would see this as a larger conversation. Actually, in arts, you do make choices. Students can take, I think it's 2 out of the 4 arts area. So no, we're looking at this is the beginning of a new cycle of standards, and then we would want the conversation about what does standards mean? Right now it means all kids in the state learn the same content statewide. We've had this now for 15 years. We still have districts with with less than 67% graduation rate of groups. We have an achievement gap. We're going to go through the same cycle again and do the same thing over again. That's the definition. You know what that is. So I think it's time to have the conversation at the Capitol and the governor's office and the new commissioner's office to say, how can we reconceptualize standards so maybe we can provide some flexibility and more student engagement at standards level instruction, but not all high school kids are going to come out with the same buckets of knowledge.
Representative Murphy?
Unfortunately, this has been taken, well, go ahead, Representative Murphy.
No. I think you're on the right. Continue what you were saying. I think that you're going to answer my next statement.
Dr. Nolan?
I was just going to say it's unfortunate it's been taken as an attack on the standards content. That group never had a conversation with us. They went off, and I've reached out to their president. I've asked for a conversation so we have a little better understanding. We are going to disagree about, we're going to agree that we want comprehensive, balanced science instruction for all kids. We're going to disagree about what that means.
Representative Murphy?
Mr. Chair, Dr. Nolan, then could that affect like math too?
Dr. Nolan?
Your bucket?
Mr. Chair, Madam Murphy, Representative Murphy, absolutely. In fact, math is one that I'm personally more concerned about than science, but absolutely. Why are we requiring all high school students take Algebra 2, which is curvilinear formulas? Raise your hand, anybody here. When have you last used a did you ever use a curvilinear formula in the last year? Okay, I'll tell you one place it is. I'll tell you one place it is, and that's small schools revenue. In fact, I was so shocked that Dr. Melcher put that in, that I actually called him up and said, Tom, did you really put a curvilinear formula in here? He said, yes, I did, with a smile. But there's all kinds of other mathematics. There's statistics. There's measurement science. There's all the investment stuff. You watch an investment program and they're using log charts and stuff. There's all kinds of other buckets of math that we can have kids take Algebra 1, geometry, and choose from a bucket of higher level math. We're going to go on forever, Mr. Chair, unless you move me off the podium here.
Dr. Nolan, thank you. Thank you, Representative Murphy. 2 things. There is a list. I want to make sure that Mr. Piccolo gets time to discuss charter schools. We will come back. Dr. Nolan, don't go away. But I will also add there is an emerging national conversation in the math area about Algebra 2's status versus the status of statistics and probability as we move more towards big data.
Yes.
Do we need to be rethinking that? And Minnesota, of course, is a national leader in big data, particularly around sports. And that industry is very quiet in the state, but wants more attention and wants more trained and qualified workers in that industry. So there's a potential for an interesting conversation there. Mr. Piccolo, welcome. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Please introduce yourself for the committee and proceed.
My name is Eugene Piccolo, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of Charter Schools. Been Executive Director for 13 and a half years. Previous to that, I started out as a junior high teacher, Dean of Students, a superintendent, Assistant Commissioner of Education when the department was called Children, Families, and Learning, and have been doing this for the last 13 years, as I said. The Minnesota Association of Charter Schools is a membership organization composed of charter schools. We are the equivalent of the School Boards Association, the Principals Association, the Teachers Association for charter schools in the state of Minnesota. We are one of only 3 state charter school associations that are self-supporting. In most other states, they are funded by foundations, and therefore their agendas are set by foundations. Ours are set by our membership in terms of our policy agendas. As an organization, we focus around 3 things: public policy, leadership development, and trying to build some community and information source for charter schools. Before I get to the challenges and strengths, just want to take a couple minutes, if I can, to talk a little about the history of chartering in Minnesota, because there's a lot of misunderstandings about chartering. Public charter schools, and they are public schools, started in Minnesota. The whole concept was introduced back in 1989 by Governor Rudy Perpich. It did not get adopted until 1991 by the legislature, and in that legislation, charter schools were actually called outcome-based schools, because the basic premise of charter schools was, and still is, that if they're freed up from some of the conventions, the rules and regulations that have bound public education over the years, that they would be able to do a better job in terms of producing academic outcomes. But there are 5 purposes in the law with regard to charter schools. One is to create new learning opportunities. Second, to create new and different learning methodologies. Third, to create different and innovative ways of measuring outcomes. 4, to create different ways of measuring school accountability. And 5, create new professional opportunities for teachers, including the opportunity to manage the schools. And in the original charter school law in 1991, the majority of the members of the boards of directors of charter schools had to be licensed teachers who taught in the school. That is still an option for governance of our schools, but it is only one of 4 different options now. That was changed in 2009. But every charter school board must have at least one teacher on their board who teaches in that school. Most of our schools have a mixture of about a third teachers, a third parents, and a third community members, which are defined in law of who can be a community member. But it's important to understand that charter schools are a hybrid between a nonprofit organization and a public institution. The way I explain it to boards is, think about a basketball. The outside, that hard shell, is the nonprofit corporation. And inside that thing, there is an inner tube, which is the public school. That hard shell is running a public institution. It's a nonprofit organization running a public institution. And if the institution closes, the nonprofit corporation still is there and has to be shut down. And sometimes that takes between 6 months to 18 months after the school closes for it to be put out of business. So it's a hybrid, and it's a hybrid in many different ways, and I'll touch a few of those. But it's important to understand that charter schools are a unique model of things. As I mentioned, parents and teachers and community members govern those schools. They are selected by the school community. So parents, teachers, staff are the electors of the board. Sometimes people ask, well, how is a charter school created? Well, a charter school is created by people, those 3 groups of people coming together and creating a vision, a mission, an idea for a school. And all of our schools have some kind of focus. We have Montessori schools. We even have an expeditionary school where the kids are traveling around the country and the world a lot of the year because it's based on very much experiential learning. We have math academies, science academies, online schools, Montessori's, and so forth. You can have whatever kind of school you want. But every charter school has what's called an authorizer. And school districts, nonprofit organizations, and colleges and universities are the authorizers of charter schools in Minnesota. And basically, a charter is a public contract. It's basically, I think of it as a franchise given by the state to a group of people to run a public school. And in that franchise agreement, or that charter contract, there are performance goals for students, there are operational goals for the institution, there are financial goals, and if, in the end, that school does not perform, charter schools can be put out of business. Think of any other public institution that's ever been put out of business. In Minnesota, over a quarter of all the charter schools that have ever started have gone out of business because they have not fulfilled the goals that they set as an institution. So it's important to understand that there is very high accountability. And a measure of success of charter schools, in a kind of perverse way, is if they are closed. It says they have not fulfilled what the goal was of that school. There are some unique characteristics that Minnesota has, that every charter school is a school district, a public school district for particular purposes. One of the purposes, for example, is special ed. And because it's a school district, every charter school must provide special education services. That is not true in most states, because in most states, charter schools are not school districts. We are only one of 2 states that automatically makes a charter school a school district. And our law has been the model law for everybody in the country that's followed along. So that's a unique piece. Another unique piece is that charter schools cannot own buildings using public money. That was put in the law originally in 1991 because this was an experiment. Minnesota was the first state. There were only 6 schools allowed, and it was an experiment whether this would work or not. And so that is a vestige that goes back to 1991 that is a challenge today that we face in charter schools. In your package, you have a primer on charter schools. And I just want to point out a few things. That in terms of our demographics, 6.5% of the public school students in the state of Minnesota attend charter schools. Last year, that was a little over 56,000 students. And the charter school sector has been growing by about 1,000 to 2,000 students a year in Minnesota. If you look at that, 54% of our students last year were free and reduced, as compared to statewide average of 37%. 59% of our students were minority students, compared to the statewide average of 33%. So we serve a population that is much more diverse and poorer than the traditional overall state averages. This year, there are 163 charter schools in operation, from Grand Portage in the far northeast of the state, to La Crescent in the southeast, to Echo, Minnesota in the southwest, to Bemidji in the northwest. But most charter schools are located in the 7-county metro area, just because that's where most of the population is. You can see the breakdown of how many are in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and the suburbs. We have a teaching population of over 4,900 teachers, licensed teachers. Our teachers must be licensed, which creates a challenge, as was talked about by MREA, in terms of many of our schools are smaller. If you look at how much space we lease, 6.7 million square feet of space 2 years ago, and it grows every year. making us, if we were probably the one entity, probably the biggest single renter in the state of Minnesota, and so forth. So anyway, that's a little about charter schools and the demographics. In terms of our strengths, I would say that there's a few things. One is that parent and teacher and community involvement in terms of the governance of our schools. That's incredibly important because it brings it down to the people who are actually doing the work, not some people way off, distant from what goes on in the classrooms. Our accountability system, the contract model of having goals and so forth you have to meet, and being able to be put out of business if you don't meet those. So our accountability system is a strength. The different learning opportunities our schools have created. A number of districts have taken things that charter schools have done in terms of programs and then followed up and created programs of their own. Another strength, I think, is the small communities. Most of our schools are on the smaller size. The average charter school is a little over 300 students. So that brings that community focus. In terms of some of the challenges that are specific to charter schools, one is the equitable funding. On a statewide basis, charter school students generate about 10% less revenue than traditional public school students. In Minneapolis, it's about 30% less. St. Paul, it's about 24% less per student. And yet those are the populations that are most at risk and socially, economically disadvantaged. The second major challenge area is facilities. The fact is that since charter schools cannot own buildings directly, over the years, a system was created that charter schools can create affiliated building companies, which is a very, from our perspective, a very wasteful way of doing things, and it provides no asset to the state if a school closes. Right now, if a school has an affiliated building company and the school would close, the affiliated building company owns that building and can do what it wants. If schools could own the buildings directly, and not every school should own a building, we're not arguing that, but those that have building companies or now could own directly, if a school would close, that asset would become something the school would have to sell, and then if there's any profit, if the mortgage is paid off and there's money, that goes back to the state treasury. Right now, there's nothing, for those investment in our buildings. And the third big area of challenge is the balance between accountability versus autonomy. That's always been the bargain in chartering, to have, for accountability, to have autonomy. And that has created challenges over the years in terms of the focus has always been on accountability, and over the years, the amount of autonomy has been less and less. And part of that is because of federal legislation, like No Child Left Behind and stuff. If you look at two of the purposes of charters, we're supposed to be about innovative measuring outcomes and school accountability, yet the only thing that counts in the accountability system is what No Child Left Behind and Every Student Succeed says counts as accountability. So that has put some limitations on those factors. In terms of overall students, I think one of the challenges is with the population we serve, the mental health needs are extensive, and that is something we would hope gets addressed over time. The growing special education population affects our schools just as much as districts do. And so those are some of the things. A number of the issues that both organizations previously talked about in terms of structure and in programming and stuff are the same issues that charter schools face. Thank you.
Mr. Piccolo, thank you very much. Why don't Dr. Nolan and Mr. Kroonquist come back to the table, figure out some seating issues there. We've got a list of folks with questions for each of the presenters. And so with that, Representative Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have two questions, and they're on the line of just making sure I understand the data that was presented to
Certainly.
us. Thank you. So the first one was, let's see, this really nice, colorful one of Minnesota with the yellow and the red. So I'm trying to line it up between your two organizations. And I don't think every school district is on it. Am I correct? So some of the yellow areas are not represented by metro areas, the school association, and they're not all by the rural areas school. So, gosh, there's a few that are falling in between the cracks between the two of you, two organizations.
So, Dr. Nolan, it's your nice autumnal colored handout Representative Pryor is referring to. I'll
It's
give
the
this
U
one
of
to
M.
you.
Excuse me. That's University of Minnesota colors.
Yes, they are. They're deliberate in some ways that way. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Pryor. Yes, there's a third organization represented by Brad Lundell up there called SEE, the Schools for Equity in Education. That's kind of the exurban yellow you see. Of course, there's the Metropolitan schools, and there are some that are members of nothing. Some have their own lobbyists, some are just not members.
Follow up, Representative Pryor?
Thank you, and that
Okay.
does answer my question. Then the other question I had was on the, again, for Dr. Nolan, on this, the slide that you had about the new teachers hired in 2018, and that you were listing out hired under the tiered system. And just so that I understand, so this is a snapshot, and it's also, is this right in thinking now this is the first snapshot of what we have with the new tiered system and how teachers are being hired into schools?
Dr. Nolan.
Mr. Chair, Representative Pryor, yes, this is the first year under Tier 1, and I caution the committee, this is a very small sample size of only 35 schools.
Representative Pryor, if I may, do either of the other testifiers have data similar, asking the similar question as Dr. Nolan has?
Mr. Chairman, Scott Cronquist, no, we do not at this point.
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, we do have some data that shows a lot of our teachers are Tier 1, Tier 2 initially, but often working toward, Tier 3 and 4 now.
Okay. Thank you very much. Representative Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our presenters. Very interesting information. This goes back to Dr. Nolan's presentation and talking about the teacher shortage, which I know the other ones we all know that's a very real issue. My question is, for any of you, has any survey or type of thing been done to figure out why students are not going into teaching? Does it have to do with the pay? Does it have to do with the testing requirements for teachers even to get their license? Does it have to do with the culture in the classroom, micromanagement or anything? I mean, we can all surmise many of these things are involved, but has there been a real survey done to figure out, to say, why are you not choosing the teaching field?
Mr. Chair, Representative Bennett, REL Midwest, which is an association, as a research association that Minnesota is part of, has done research on that, and we can get you that. It's kind of all of the above, but salaries and the loan debt is important because young people need to service their loans. And in Greater Minnesota, starting teacher salaries are between maybe $37,000 and $40,000. If you have a significant loan, you can't service that loan, rent a house, get a car, have a life on that size salary. And so that's something that we think we can address. It's an actionable item, but it is all of the above. It's 20, 30 years of not teaching. It's also the lack of autonomy that teachers have now in many districts. But very good question, certainly worth hearing, especially in the policy committee, I would think. Yeah.
Mr. Cronquist?
Mr. Chairman, Scott Cronquist, Association of Metro School Districts. I would just add, relative to the teachers of color, this actually came up at the session I just mentioned last Monday, and we had students there, students of color, and asked that question. And many of them said it's because they don't see themselves, right, in the profession right now. And so it's kind of a self-perpetuating problem, right, that we need to make progress on that, because I think once students of color see themselves in the teaching force, it'll be more attractive to them, and will help us get the ball rolling.
I believe when we're ranked nationally in terms of percentage of people of color in the teaching profession, Minnesota is at the bottom. If maybe we're 49th, not 50th, but very, very low.
Low, yeah.
Representative Detmer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I asked Mr. Grunquist this question already. So for Dr. Nolan and Mr. Piccolo, do you have any statistics on your school districts? I know 231 school districts, 163 school districts on decline in enrollment. Is that something you could get to the committee? First, for charter schools, if they close, that's decline in enrollment.
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, Representative, we have a few that have declining enrollment, but we can get you those statistics on that. You are correct that if their enrollment drops precipitously, they're probably going out of business.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Detmer, yes, we
Dr.
can,
Nolan.
but you may want to ask the department to provide that. There is declining school aid, so it'd be pretty easy for them to calculate that and work backwards into what the declining enrollment was. And then you get a statewide picture, and Mr. Melcher has those nice stratas of districts. That might be a better source to get a statewide picture.
Representative Detmer?
And Mr. Chair, question for Mr. Piccolo. Has any charter schools or the school districts, I know they're both school districts, but has any charter schools or school districts tried to come together and form under the same umbrella, say, of the largest school district, but still keep the autonomy, the identification of a charter school under that umbrella?
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, Representative, under our current law, charter schools are formed as a district, so they are their own district. There's a law, in the charter school law, a provision for collaborative working together, but they still maintain their total autonomy between the two districts, the traditional district and the charter school district. But they can work together on different projects and so forth, and there's a process for that to occur under the charter school law. But we do not, under current law, allow a district to be run or by another district.
Representative Detmer?
And Mr. Chair, Mr. Piccolo, have you seen anything that other states are doing with charter schools and other public schools? Anything like this going on?
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, Representative Detmer, we are unique in that sense that in many states, charter schools are part of a school district. We would consider them magnet schools, and they call them charter schools. Wisconsin is an example of that. Basically, they've had two charter school laws for years. They have Milwaukee charter schools, which are very much like ours, where they're a school unto themselves in a school district, and the rest of the state, where they're really they're just a school within a school district that has charter status, but really is very much a part of the school district.
Mr. Piccolo, am I correct? Colorado, the traditional public school districts are the authorizer of charter schools. Did I understand that correctly when I was there for a tour?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yes. In many states, the only authorizer are school districts. And originally, under our charter school law, they were the only authorizers or sponsors, as we called them back in '91, that could authorize a school. In some states, there's actually a state authority that is the authorizer, but in most states, it's traditional school districts who are the authorizer. And again, it is that kind of mixture that the school really is part of the school district, and yet it's created as we'd call them, what do you call them, site-based management schools.
Okay. All right. Representative Detmer, anything else?
No, it's just something that's interesting to take a look at how we can create that joint work with the two schools. And I know it's not under it's not under our statute right now, but it might be something to look at. So thank you.
Thank you. Notice to members of the committee, you're an inquisitive bunch. So the list has gotten long. Brevity is the soul of many things. Representative Huat.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Dr. Nolan, I have a question for you. You mentioned in your presentation enhancement. I'm sorry, engagement, wrong word. And I know in my own school district, which is a large metro one, I was surprised to find that the after-school programs and the sports programs are on a decline. And some of this is due to, in one case for the after-school elementary programs, which is all about enhancement and learning different things, they asked the parents to pay a $15 fee, and they lost almost 30% of the kids. And talking to my athletic directors and different directors around that I work with, I find that the same thing has happened with sports fees. Engagement, I think this is an area that we can look at to keep our kids engaged. And so where is the rural area on this?
Dr. Nolan?
Mr. Chair, Representative Huat. Yes, the rural area is concerned, and I would invite you to bring Representative Wyndham to testify. They have reduced their high school fees dramatically, and their middle school fees are at zero, precisely to try to engage more of their new population, which are Hispanic, into sports. And so this is something they're very passionate about, and I think I could bring some other districts that are looking very closely at that or already are doing it, because fees are a detriment. Also, transportation is a detriment. We used to have, activity buses decades ago. They're no longer there. And so there are increasing barriers to engagement, especially in after school, and that's where the passions come out for kids, okay? And that's where we engage them, and it's very unfortunate. So thank you for that question. Would love to have Wyndham come up and talk with you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Sandstedt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, and thank you all for your information. Very helpful today. My question is for you, Mr. Piccolo, and it is regarding, and you actually kind of answered it initially. My question was centered around, do you have information on the number of teachers in charter schools that are currently Tier 1 or 2? And you said that it was a pretty high number right now. Is that correct?
Mr. Piccolo?
Representative, Mr. Chair, Representative, there is a significant number that have gotten waivers. A lot of it is, especially in the areas that aren't licensed, have traditional license, like Hmong language, and those kinds of things, where we have to get Tier 1 licenses.
Representative Sandstedt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to just ask for a little more information, and if you don't have it today, if you can get that information to the committee, I think it would be really helpful. Any information on the number of Tier 1 or 2 teachers in charter schools in the special ed area?
Mr. Piccolo.
Mr. Chair, Representative Hanson, we'd have to look at that. We don't have those statistics offhand.
Okay. Again, if you can,
Representative Sandstedt.
thank you, Mr. Chair. If you can get that information, that would be very helpful. In terms of the board makeup, you mentioned that there were typically 4 models that could be followed, one of those models being a teacher-led board. Out of the charter schools that currently exist within the state, how many would you say are teacher-led, or do you have any kind of a breakdown in terms of those 4 categories?
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sanchez, I would say roughly, we are actually doing a survey right now, because we do one every couple of years to find out, because there is a legal process to change the structure of boards that people have to go through. I would say the last time we did it, probably about a quarter of our schools had teacher majority boards. The other 3 options are a parent majority board, a community member majority board, or a non-majority board, and that's become more the common one, where nobody has a majority of the seats on the board.
Representative Sandstedt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Jurgens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Piccolo, I have questions regarding the demographic information, but as it relates to achievement, the larger percentage of students receiving free and reduced lunch at charter schools, larger percentage of limited English proficiency students, minority students, and special ed students. Do you have data that shows how those demographics perform versus students in non-charter schools?
Mr. Piccolo.
Mr. Chair, Representative Jurgens, there is data for each individual school. There's not a collective, because each charter school is its own district, and so you're comparing all kinds of different things, be comparing oranges and zucchini and apples and watermelon. But there are comparisons between schools of the same kind of demographics as a charter school with a traditional district school.
Okay.
Representative Jurgens?
It was just something I was curious about because those are 4 challenging areas, and just wondering if perhaps charter schools have found something that the rest of the schools might want to incorporate. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Representative Katiza-Watun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me. Dr. Nolan, I just had a quick question. Are there any partnerships over the summer term for current undergraduate students studying education in order to move them out into some of the rural areas, experience the culture, work with the students? I'm just imagining, based on some rough statistics from St. Thomas, that approximately 70% of the undergraduate students at St. Thomas are from the metro area, from the state, and then of that 70%, 70% of them are from the metro area. So if we're looking to increase or address that teacher shortage, is there something being done already to get some of the students in the metro area who are interested in becoming teachers out into the rural parts of the state so that they can experience the culture, if that's not something that they've had experience with at this point?
Dr. Nolan?
Mr. Chair, Representative, not that I'm aware of. I know that some other states have tried that, but there's not that I'm aware of in Minnesota.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Representative Edelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Piccolo, another question for you. In terms of looking at the specific program focuses and all the different schools, all the different charter schools throughout the state of Minnesota, do you have data on what schools throughout, what are their areas? Do you have a map showing that one is for arts immersion? Do you have a map showing at what school is specializing in what area?
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, Representative, we don't have a map per se, but we do have that on our website, what each school's focus area is. But we don't have a map by, here's a environmental-based school, here's a autistic focus school, and so forth.
Representative Edelson?
And has that changed based on the need of the districts in which you're serving, the population?
Piccolo.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I think the mixture of schools has expanded in terms of the kinds of programs over the years. For example, in the last few years, we've had 2 schools that have become focused around autism programming because there was such a need for that, and they now have expanded to multi-campuses. One of them has 3 campuses now in the metro area because the demand from parents was extensive enough that people didn't want to travel 40 miles to send their kid to the program, so they've created other sites.
Representative Edelson? Thank you. Representative Sandell?
Mr. Chair and gentlemen, I'm familiar with the work that Joe Nathan did a while ago with charter schools and initiating the ideas of school choice in Minnesota. But the idea for charter schools, it seemed to me, initiated with the New York Federation of Teachers and Al Shanker and some of his group. And the idea was that these charter schools with somewhat different administrative and bureaucratic responsibilities would work in areas that the other public schools could benefit from. Their experimentation and the assessment of success. In each of your memberships, what formal relationship is there between the charter schools in the district and the other public schools in the district to share successes and the work that the schools have done?
How about if we go left to right, which would put Mr. Kroonquist up first? Can you respond to Representative Sandell, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Sandell. Yeah, great question. This is something that we have talked about, and we have actually a position paper on charter schools, and the main focus of our position paper is we think we have fallen short, and when I say we actually mean the state has fallen short in carrying out one of the original goals of charter schools, which was, you mentioned, was that they would serve as laboratories of experimentation. And then after best practices were identified, that information would be shared with other school districts. And if we found that an exemption from a certain state law or rule proved very beneficial, why would we not then extend that to all school districts, right? So we would actually hope the state would take the lead on that, whether it's the Department of Education or higher education institution, in conducting that kind of survey and that kind of work and identifying those areas where we should be spreading those kind of best practices.
Mr. Piccolo?
Representative, I would say it's hit and miss in terms of individual schools working with individual districts that they're in. Some districts and charter schools have very cooperative relationships, and they've shared things. I think of the area in Cook County. We have 3 charter schools in Cook County, in Grand Portage, Grand Marais, and Tofte. And all those schools and the school district traditional school district come together on a regular basis to talk about how they can work together and what they learn from each other. I would concur that there's never been any systematic look at this in terms of research done on it, and that has always been, I think, a failure of the whole experiment when it started, that there was nothing built in at the beginning to say we're going to do some research about it. One of the things we have done as an association in the last couple of years now, 4th year, is created innovation awards around those 5 purposes in the charter school law to refocus schools back on innovation and document it so that it can be shared with other people.
Dr. Nolan?
Mr. Chair, Representative Sandell, I would ditto what my colleagues have said and add 2 things. One, we do offer an award called Profiles of Excellence for that precise reason. So a program that's really working well in one district can be highlighted in MREA, and other districts can replicate it. We look for those. We have those awards on our website. And secondly, our members, when they come to our annual conference, they hunger to hear how other districts are successfully solving challenges. So you're onto something that we can learn from one another, but I would ditto, it's not been systematically done, certainly not between charters and regular ed.
Representative Sandell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one other question that we can perhaps discuss a little bit later on. There are a lot of teachers sitting around this table, or former teachers sitting around this table, and I think we all concur that one of the most important elements of a successful school and successful classroom is the preparation and the hard work of the individual teacher. There are some statistics that you've offered today about the characteristics of teachers, but I'd like to be able to talk to you a little bit later on some of those statistics. Mr. Cronquist showed differentiation between income of teachers or average pay for teachers, but as we know that teachers' salaries depend on length of service, academic degrees, and sometimes in other circumstances as well. Particularly now when we have a variety of teacher licenses. I'd like to be able to compare the average years of service in rural areas where the average salary is so low, and the average academic degree of those teachers, how long they stay there. And as you say, teachers are such an important element of that community. And again, the effect of the new levels of teacher certification in compensation. So we can talk about that later, but that's an interest of mine. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Richardson. Last questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Piccolo, I just had a quick question about the demographics for charter schools. I was curious whether there's data on the percentage of teachers of color within the charter schools across the state.
Mr. Piccolo?
Mr. Chair, Representative Richardson. The statistics that we have seen collected show that we have about 6% a minority population in terms of teachers. So it's not much overall higher than the state average. We do have some individual schools that have very significant populations of teachers of color, but others that are, nothing.
Representative Richardson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. With that, Representative Erickson, as we close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm asking that you provide us with open enrollment data if AMSD and MREA have access to district statewide, what the open enrollment looks like, because I know that it's very active. And to MREA, I suspect that in some rural districts, incentives are paid to lure teachers from the metro to the rural areas, as I have heard that in my area. And finally, a comment, I think all three of you would agree that previously community experts were in place of Tier 1 teachers. And remember, Tier 1 is a higher standard, and so we have moved in the direction of raising the standard in going from the community expert to Tier 1.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll look forward, tomorrow the hearing will be focused on youth voices and having students come in and talk about their experience in K-12. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll see you all tomorrow. We stand in adjournment.